I am really happy to be here today. And in thinking about what I wanted to talk about today, I think my mind roamed around to a number of things. And then Sunday, I happened to lead the book reading that Dr. Sharon was just talking about, that is in the Richelieu Hall on Sunday morning from 10:15 to 11:15. And we were reading at the very end in the chapter that Ernest Holmes calls the law of attraction. And the chapter before that is a mental equivalent. And so it's kind of in a section together. So he was talking about a number of things that kept coming up. And as Dr. Sharon says, we read a bit, but then we talk a bit. And so all of those things happen, and we did that in this class. And the term mental equivalent came up in that class, and I actually don't know that it was in the reading or I said it or something in the text put that in my mind. So ever since then, I've just sort of been thinking about that expression. Now, I call this talk visualization, but that's because it's not going on the marquee. This is Wednesday. There's not a lot of publicity. Tracy McKinney puts it on Instagram, and so she texted me last night. She said, last minute, I'm trying to get this done. Can you give me the title? Well, I wasn't going to tell her mental equivalent, and I will get to that in a moment, but I wanted something that people actually knew and understood quickly, so I said visualization. So visualization is where I started. And the reason that I chose visualization is because it's a term that all of us easily understand when we say visualization. I could say, close your eyes and imagine you're in one of those tents that you sometimes see in parties or you sometimes see at children's fairs, where you just jump in and you land into this whole sea of multicolored balls. It is so much fun. Every time I see a picture like that of someone else in it, and I've done it myself, it's just fun. So I visualize that. And I know that in early Science of Mind 101 type classes, when people are new to the teaching, one of the things we talk about is visualization, using it as a technique of feeling prosperous, for example. You might visualize yourself or put yourself literally into a place like the lobby of a posh hotel and sit around and imagine that you're there, or go to a really posh place and have a cup of coffee, just to enjoy the opulent ambiance and to feel that you're part of that, to contribute to that feeling of prosperity and abundance and all of those things, because all of that visualization and the feeling is part of getting where we want to go. And so if you want, let's say that you want to visualize something very posh, and you say, visualize a car in your driveway, a brand new car. Well, you might visualize a Jaguar sports car in the color red, please, and see it in your driveway. Or you might see a plug-in hybrid Toyota Highlander in moss green. What do you want? And so you put it and visualize the thing that you want. Mental equivalent, which really is so much more than that. The mental equivalent operates because this whole teaching rests very much on our thoughts and our beliefs and the feeling we put into those thoughts that lead to those beliefs, and all of that put together creates our reality. And it's more than a car in the driveway. It's a whole lot more about the ways that we're thinking about things. And as very often happens in my life, once I started thinking about that, two different things popped up in my experience that caused me to think about this whole idea of how we feel about things, how we think about smaller things, and how it leads to our reality. And this morning, I lead the class on Learn to Live, which is the parables of Jesus, the one that we went through this morning. I almost needed to stop the class and say, but wait a minute, I was going to talk about this today. And it just pops up in the words on the page that we're a part of, so much so that I even brought the copies of the page just in case, because it was just that big a deal in that moment. So what happened last evening as I'm preparing, I'm putting my thoughts together, and I'm actually reading or rereading some of the text in the Science of Mind textbook that I read on Sunday. And this is in the pages, something like page 303 to 307. And I was reading that, and I get a text message. I get a text message from someone who had a medical thing pop up in an appointment. It was surprising, was not expected in any way. There was no reason for that to have happened. And so it was just there in the text. And so I responded by saying, is this something you're concerned about because you don't want to get that earworm going in your brain and that's a concern to you, that it's going to affect things that are to come? Or are you worried that the medical people are going to put that down on the page and you're going to be saddled with that as part of your medical record and you don't want that? And then she goes on to talk to me a little bit about what she's thinking about. And I said, I just found myself quoting Ernest Holmes. And Ernest Holmes says, nothing is ever real to us unless we make it real. And then I remembered, of course, I didn't quote it to her, but Shakespeare says, there's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Ernest Holmes goes on to say, nothing can ever touch us unless we allow it to touch us. So as it turns out, the medical situation was a no thing. Another test was done and everything was fine. It really was a no thing. But it was an opportunity for me to think about how our mental equivalents, in the sense that what are we imagining, what are we thinking, what is the feeling and opinions around all that stuff, how does that shape my reality? Because I know that our thoughts and our feelings shape those beliefs that we already have, perhaps, or that we are creating, and that creates our reality. Nothing is ever real to us unless we make it real. And we make it real by how we think about it. The other thing that happened was there was an opportunity that came up that caused me to think about an opinion about something. Actually, there's a lot of things that pop up to make you think about an opinion about something. And this particular one got my attention, so that if there is a situation or an individual or an activity about which I have this formed opinion, I might talk about it, I might suggest it, I might participate in a conversation. But what if nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so? What if nothing can touch me unless I allow it to touch me? So if that's the situation and I feel this is touching me, then that means there is a thought behind that I may want to rethink. Now, Ernest Holmes, in all of the passage that we read on Sunday and in many other places, he talks about the fact that our minds are where all of this happens. It's not a secret with him. But he also understands that there are things in our minds that may be contributing to what reality that we are experiencing. So he encourages us, very gently really, he encourages us to sit with that, and contemplate, especially when it comes into your experience. If you've had this test result that gets your attention. So I need to decide, if nothing is ever real to me until I make it real, what do I do with that? And if simply because of habit, because of the, I would say, oppression sometimes of the outside world saying these things are important, if because of all those things, now I'm thinking about this thing that I hadn't even thought about before. So what do I do with that energy that I'm putting into something that I don't want? I do not want to make it real. And Ernest Holmes says that we need to be clear that the spiritual presence, the power, the intelligence in the universe is my intelligence right now. And that I know that all things are whole, I am perfect, and that whatever appears to be going on is a no thing. And I'm allowing myself to simply release it. I'm not allowing that no thing to worm its way into my thinking. And if I have to, in the next 15 minutes, if it pops back up again, I might have to do that again. How serious am I about changing what is a no thing? How serious am I when I've decided I want to change the way I think about this? This is so much smaller in one respect than visualizing a brand new car in your driveway. But on the other hand, it goes to the core of our being. It is the most important thing. It's how I think about my life as it unfolds. And how do I think about it? And how much time do I spend making sure that I am in the right place, that I mentally, that I am there spiritually, where I want to be, not all in the muck. Now, keep in mind, we can't stay in that space. We live in the world. Ernest Holmes says that more than once. It's our level of understanding about the world that limits us and nothing else. But we grow in understanding as we spend time doing the things that cultivate that field of consciousness. In Learn to Live, we were talking about Jesus' parables, and the parables are metaphysically, they're talking about your mind as a field where you plant things and what you plant and how you tend them. They talk about a vineyard. There are a lot of vineyards in the parables that for different parables and in different ways. And today they talked about, the one we're reading today, the estate, he says, is the mind, your own mental estate and how you are thinking about things. And it's very interesting to me that we can make those connections, because some of the literal meanings of the parables are difficult for the students in our class. Well, I don't think that, they will say. And that just doesn't sound right to me. It doesn't seem fair. And yet, what all is happening in the subconscious, in fact, one of the things that he said is that, as we have seen, you cannot let your mind just go, he says. Without supervision, your mind becomes the habituation of devils and demons. And what he means is, if you just let everything go and let everything come into your mind without taking that notion of what it is that I really want to think and how I want to be, and remember, as Ernest Holmes says, that nothing can ever affect me unless I allow it to be. Touch me, he says, unless I allow it to touch me. And so, keeping ourselves aware, that's really what the call is. Because the devils and demons he's talking about are really those stray thoughts, those things that we actually don't want to think, but we allow them to come through us. We sang the song, I think it was Sunday, we let the love wash over us. But what if we're letting other things wash over us? Because we steep ourselves in the news or steep ourselves in conversations that don't really go anywhere. They take up time, and we come away feeling constricted, perhaps. I've used the example of Nextdoor, which is probably what I read most often. I'm on Nextdoor because I like knowing about local things that may happen. But there are times when things pop up on Nextdoor, and there's this, the devils and demons are out. Now, I will also say there are plenty of people that I'm noticing it more this year than last year, and I don't think it's just me noticing. There are more people that are pausing to say, but wait a minute, I think there's another way to look at this, and share this affirmative, uplifting point of view about whatever the contentious thing is. I see it more and more and more. I'm taking that as a good thing, Dr. Sharon. I am taking it as that there is more coming in that is just helping us to lift ourselves up. And so I am encouraging all of us to be that voice, not necessarily on Nextdoor, but wherever. If you have a voice, if you have something, when you hear something's not right, consider the possibility that you could say, I just don't agree with that. There was a discussion also that I really observed and was not a part of about uses of different words that some people find objectionable. And one of the choices, there were a number that are put out there. There was a word that started the conversation. But near the end of at least my reading of the conversation, someone mentioned that the word God triggers a lot of people. And that is true. And this particular minister said, essentially, I know that. I know they're in my congregation, so there's a lot of words for God that I can use without using that one. So why would I do that? Why can I not just simply be kind and speak of all the different ways to do that without doing that? And I thought that was where I stopped in the conversation. It was a rather long one. And so I think that's finding ways to not hold back on what you think and what you feel, but to find ways to contribute to peace, to a harmony, to an understanding that's greater than you are. So that brings me back to the idea of this mental equivalent and what we are choosing to think about and how we're choosing to think about simple things. Is there a situation in your life that is an irritant for you? It is something that you would like to look at differently. Well, take a moment and just consider that nothing is good or bad, and that I do not have to let this touch me. And if I don't let it touch me, I'm not allowing it to touch me, and that's it. I make the decision. And so I move into a different space. So whenever the situation, the words, the person, the activity comes in, you've already decided that I'm not going to be a part of that. I'm not going to let anything be done to me, because that's all the thing I can control. I cannot control what other people say. I can't control how they are. I certainly can't control their opinions, but I can control how I respond. I can control, and I can decide ahead of time how I'm going to do that. And so that's, to me, where I came with this idea of the mental equivalent, because the mental equivalent is much more about imagining a world, my own world, and how I'm in it, and how I want to be in it. And that is an atmosphere, it's a thought atmosphere, but it's much more in the idea of my thoughts and my feelings, as well as beliefs that I have accumulated and ones that I may need to let go of. There was a story that I was told a long time ago. It was a young boy, and this boy, the adult person who told it said it happened to him. He went to visit his grandfather on their farm in Illinois, southern Illinois. And his father has a big farm, and he grows corn. So he was there in the spring, and the corn plants were coming up, and there were also weeds. And so boy said, "But Granddad, what about all those weeds?" And the grand said, "Don't worry about the weeds. They'll be fine." And so the boy had the occasion to visit later in the summer, and the corn is as high as an elephant's eye, and they're magnificent corn stalks. And he's looking at them, and he kind of wants to run in them, and then he stops and says, "But Granddad, what happened to the weeds?" And his granddad said, "Oh, they're still there." But they had been overwhelmed by the corn. So I think that's the other thing that we talk about in this teaching, in that mental equivalent, that we put in our idea of ourselves so many wonderful things that I don't worry about the earworms. I don't worry about things that get in my consciousness, that I'll just ignore that because I'm going to know that I am a child of the infinite. I am a person that knows that there is goodness in everything. I am a person who knows that good and only good can come from any of the things that are happening. And when I know it and look for it, I find it. And many more good things that you can say for yourselves and how you choose to be. Make the choice. It's always my choice how I'm going to be. It's always all of our choices about how we want to be. So I'd like to close with, invite you to close your eyes as we finish. I know that this life that I am living is full of many wonderful things. And I also know that as long as I'm walking this plane, that there is the reality that I will come upon. If I'm walking in a stream, I may have to go around a rock. If I am walking in a stream, I may have to move a branch that's gotten in my way. But I'm walking forward, and I'm feeling that wonderful cleansing water washing over my feet, my legs, however far I'm in. And I know that wherever I am, whatever pops up in my stream of consciousness, I'm not blocking any of it. I'm allowing that flow of goodness, of sweetness, goodness moving through, and I'm allowing it to be my good and my choice and my way of being. I make choices every day, and I know that I am guided by that power of spirit that I depend on to show me of the myriad choices there are, the one that is the highest and best for me. I'm inspired. Make it clear. Make it easy. Make it simple for me to understand. And I know, as I'm grateful for all there is and for all that's moving through me, that it is good and very good, and it's done. So I simply agree and say, and so it is. thank you all for being here on Wednesday. I see that Grant is back there maybe with a microphone if someone wanted to make a call. Oh, we're doing, yes. Ruthie is going to start passing the plate. Are we going to share the blessing? So most of us know this. Divine love consecrates my gift. It goes forth to heal, to bless, and to prosper all those who give and all those who receive. I rejoice in the sharing of my good, and I release my gift with love. And so it is. So does anyone have a comment or a question? Or I'd love it if somebody has one online too. I am eager to hear that. Thank you, David. What?
I went to Yellowstone last week, and while I was there, we ended up leaving Gardner, going to Bluetooth, and the exit was closed going back into Montana. It took 4 hours to get there. So we had to drive all the way back through Yellowstone and start over where we had started out.
Is that because of water?
It was because of the snow.
Snow.
So much snow. Well, it was a long day. We drove from 7 in the morning till 10 at night. And my cousin shared her biggest fear with me. So what I did was, I said, I can't talk to you about it right now because I was in the midst of all that driving. The next day, I had told her that I loved her and that what she said doesn't affect me of how I feel about you. And I gave her a mermaid gift and a number to call if she ever felt that feeling again. And I realized that I stayed in my power by not going there with her on the road. And the services that have helped me so much, having been going to the services here and staying in my own dominion.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it was.
Anyone else?
We do have a comment from online.
Yes.
Sydney Glass from Florida comments, Dr. Bitzer taught that we must become the consciousness of the thing that we desire in our lives. For example, if you desire to be prosperous, you must think and feel prosperous.
Yes. At first I thought we were going to go to this parable because he talks about the excessive, he was talking about greed and how that if you can be very prosperous, but when you drift over into holding the prosperity thing for its own sake, then you've drifted into something else. But yes, it is thinking prosperous is exactly the way to do. And I would add thinking of generosity in the same as a companion for your prosperity.
Good morning, my name is Cheryl. About visualization and stuff, I just feel like I use it every single day, and even more so lately because I retired about a year ago. So it was almost like the old slate was erased. I'm like, I have to find myself. So instead of, wearing myself out physically, trying to go and do everything, visualizing, well, if I went to a group like that and, they were talking about this or that, how would I feel? And so some of it I can just weed out. Well, I don't need to try that. I know it's not going to work. It's kind of negative, but you can't do everything. And so in the things that I find peaceful and joyful, I've been gravitating towards that. And so it's been helping me to visualize. Thank you for saying that.
It's uplifting to think of those affirmative things. It helps rather than...
It's a blank slate. I can be that if I think about it more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Any other thing? One of the things that Ernest Holmes talks about a lot is spending time in nature because he thinks it's inherently uplifting, just being there.
It's rather fascinating what's happening around us. The word gratitude keeps popping up everywhere. And people who also are talking about it in different ways remind us that gratitude is a prayer in itself. Thank you is a prayer that's complete.
Yes, it is. Gratitude, because that was the Dalai Lama that said, if I have one thing to say, it would be gratitude. Thank you. That was the one prayer. Yes. Anyone else? Thank you all. I like getting comments. That's really cool. Then I think we are complete, and I thank you all for being here. And we got flyers out there for you. Check and see what we got. We didn't talk about our Juneteenth either today in the announcement.
It's true, we're still May, we still have one more May Sunday. We'll start this Sunday.
Well, we are going to have a Juneteenth celebration, so just so you know. It's 18th of June. So anyway, see you all in church, in the center, or that's right, in Richelieu Hall. That's what we should be saying.
Richelieu Hall.